Just real quick on myself, Jason McHugh, ReSource Pro Technology Services. I came from an acquisition, Propellant. So ReSource Pro acquired Propellant last July. Our team is a system integrator, right? So we work very closely with carriers, MGAs, TPAs, self-insured funds, really supporting their IT functions, right? So anything from implementing core systems, enhancing core systems, building integrations, managed services, and then obviously today's conversation is really going to be around data and data migration. Myself, 25 years in the software insurance delivery space, carrier, vendor, consultant, in the last 6, 7, 8 years now, really in the system integration space. So I'm going to pass it off to Danny first to just introduce himself.
Hi, my name's Danny Smith. I am the VP of IT at Athens Administrators, and we're a third-party administrator based in California. We are about 700 people in total, and we look after claims. We administer claims, work comp, and P&C. And my background before that, I worked at 2 different software vendors that made claims administration systems. So I've been on both sides. Now I'm on this side.
And Bruce?
Hi, Bruce Broussard, founder and managing partner at Percipience. We have a software data lakehouse product that integrates with any core insurance system, policy billing, claims, reinsurance, accounting, and pulls it in and aggregates, conforms, consolidates the data, establishes a platform for AI and analytics and basic reporting. And then we have AI and analytics and dashboards on top of that. Started out as a developer, became CIO of a mid-sized international insurance company for a few years, joined IBM, spent 15 years there running their global insurance data and analytics practice, and then connected with these guys, fortunately or unfortunately, for 6 years at Insurtech, where I created their data solutions division and started out in the data software business.
I was just going to say, so you might hear some good banter between the three of us because we've known each other probably, I've known each of you for about 10 years. I don't know if you guys knew each other before that, but in terms of working together, at the same company or now, as a customer, as a partner, it's great to be, 3 of us on stage. So it'll be great. So before I start asking these guys questions, I mean, again, they're truly the experts. So we're hoping to have a couple minutes in the end for some Q&A. So as you guys think of things, make a note, make a mental note, and hopefully we have some time to really engage the audience in the end. So Danny, I'm going to start with you, and again, I mean, so you're Athens, you're a TPA. I know one of your strategies really is growing through acquisition, right? Mm-hmm. So growing sort of, bringing those books of business, onto, your claims platform, and I know we help you a lot there. But, maybe you can just start with talking about some of the challenges that, you're facing within Athens or, broader, sort of insurance organizations, are facing with migrating data.
So one of our biggest challenges is time, to be honest, because we take on business from other TPAs, and our sales guys will go out there and try and win the business, and they'll promise the world. And they promise the world in terms of, we can get you live in 4 weeks, maybe, right? And that's just not doable. So we like to tell the sales guys 3 months. We'll take 2 months, and every now and again, we'll get a 6-week one where I'll call you and say, Jason, we've got one of those. Can you get your team ready? Can we work on this together? But when we do these conversions from these other TPAs, we're having to get their data from their TPA. And they don't tell their TPA they're leaving until they're ready to leave, right? And they've got to get the city to sign the contracts and whatever all that takes. And then the clock begins. And getting that data and bringing it in, one of the challenges that we have is that many of our customers are in California, and many of our customers are public entities, and the fiscal year for that is July 1st. So they all want to go at the start of their fiscal year. So I think maybe last year or the year before, we worked together, we had 7 clients go live, and we had about 2 months notice for each one of them, and they all wanted to go live on July 1st.
I do remember that. We did seven data migrations all at the same time.
So that's our biggest challenge. We can't scale to do that within my own IT team. Okay. That's why we have a couple of partners, not just you, but you are our primary partner, and you did 7 of them that year.
Well, we did more than 7 that year. We did 7 and 7-1.
Yes, yeah.
Excellent. So Bruce, how about your perspective? I mean, just, challenges that, obviously you've got a different perspective, not just with TPAs, but, IBM, Insurtech, now Percipience, really working with, carriers. But what are some of those challenges that you're seeing as you're facing these, large data migration projects?
Yeah, I mean, like one of the other sessions that I think is coming up, talking about insurance organizations that drowning in data and starving for information, right? And so you've got data locked in a number of different systems. The average P&C carrier in the U.S. has 3 or more policy systems and a lot of overlap. And so bringing that data together in different formats, different constructs, so that you can look at it holistically and deliver it to the business in a way that not only is something that they can trust and have confidence in, but is appropriate for the business context in which they're looking at it, right? The CFO doesn't look at the same data the same way that the actuary does or the underwriter does. The time constraints are different. The volume of history and the way that it needs to be aggregated and presented to support each of them is different. And so bringing the data together, establishing a solid platform that can not only address the requirements that they know of today, but can survive the requirements that are going to evolve tomorrow is a significant challenge and something that we focus a lot on.
So one of the other things that we were talking about as we were prepping is, the number of years of history and data and, making sure that we've got data quality, right? So Danny, I'm going to sort of start with you again, just sort of like that return on investment, right? When is sort of, enough when you're looking at, bringing data, from another party, into your solution?
Sure. So we need to make sure that we make the loss runs balance to the penny.
Okay.
Right, from the previous TPA to when we receive their data. But if you're thinking about how much time and investment you spend on cleansing that data, within the TPA world, we have the opportunity to say we could draw the line if we want to on closed claims, right? And we have to have good data for open claims, any reopened claims. Any closed claims can be reopened at any point.
Sure.
But maybe we'll draw a line in the sand and say any closed claim after 5 years or older, we'll spend a little less time. If we're running out of time, we'll spend a little less time trying to cleanse that data than we would claims that have been closed for under 5 years.
Which makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, you obviously have to continue to manage the open stuff. On the closed stuff, you've got a little bit more of a, risk threshold there, because hopefully they're closed and you balance all the reserves out to zero and all that good stuff. Yep. But Bruce, how about yourself? I mean, I know you've done some very large projects with lots of data, lots of years of history.
Yeah, I think we were blessed to share a Sell and Model Insurer Award for one of our implementations. We had 17 different system integrations that had 6 different policy systems, 16 lines of business, 30 plus years of history, $14.5 billion of premium that we had to balance to the penny and deliver within 10 months. And they gave us 12, we delivered in 10. And sometimes it doesn't always work out that way, but we were very blessed. But you go through a lot of things there, and I think the challenges, like Danny was saying, understanding the purpose for the data and what it's going to be used for, loss runs, you've got to balance things like NCCI and ISO submissions have to be able to transition over as your migrants. You've got to take care of those. But when you're dealing, you can have a little bit broader tolerance on accuracy and precision when you're dealing with something that's 20, 25 years and the actuaries are using it. Maybe there's a bigger challenge right there. And it's a balance between effort and
cost.
And cost, right? When I was with IBM, God bless them, we had one client that paid us $10 million literally because they wanted their 35 years of history to balance to the penny, month by line of business. Wow. And we were happy to cash the check, but we're like, you can't tell me that you actually have a business use that is going to vary that much at that level of precision. But look, if you want to write the check, I'm happy to cash it.
Yeah, I mean, I can just tell you, our team does, hundreds of data migrations, right? Over the history. I mean, we do 25, 30 a year, kind of thing. And I tell customers all the time, like, last year, last 2, 3 years, you want to balance to the penny. But as you go 5, 10, 15, 20 years, out, well, that tolerance needs to relax a little bit because you can spend a lot of time and energy to make that balance. I mean, we were talking a little bit during our prep session. I mean, a lot of, especially Bruce, from your perspective, when you're aggregating data, the systems change, right? I mean, systems change all the time. Data structures change. Does anyone remember back in 1987 when we took that field on screen number 3 and we, inserted some crazy code? Like, that stuff doesn't, really do well when it comes to migrating data. So you do need to have a little bit of that tolerance.
Yeah, I think the difference between balancing and reconciling is huge.
Huge.
People will never hear me use the word balance unless I'm drawing the distinction between reconciliation, because things almost never balance exactly. The key is that you've got to be able to reconcile and say what the differences are. And one of the clients we're working with now, we were talking before, a client that just went live a month ago, there were some deltas, and it turns out that several of the differences that we found are, oh my God, there were some gaps in the legacy business, so in the way we were looking at it previously, and this is really more correct, or no, this is here's something that we need to fix, and so you've got to be able to reconcile the stuff. Balancing 30 years ago is almost never.
No, I mean, I always use the two together, balance and reconcile, right?
Exactly.
So you do have to look at those together. So sticking on the topics of challenge, I mean, you guys talk about the quality of data and making sure that it's there as you're going through that migration. So Danny, I'm going to sort of go back to you on compliance, right? And sort of I'll use the three letters that you probably don't like to hear that often, but EDI and EDI reporting. I know that's a challenge for a lot of carriers as well as DPAs. Maybe you can just talk a little bit about sort of the compliance aspect and of data quality and what that means for you guys.
Well, honestly, it's a challenge in our own claim system.
Okay.
Right? The claim system wasn't built with that natively. It was added on at the end, and there's been challenges with that over the years. And we've engaged some subject matter experts from ReSource Pro to help us with that. And one of the things they helped us identify was that we were creating our own problems when we did these data conversions. And we didn't look to see what had come from the legacy system and what had been reported to the state or states from the legacy system. And then we ran it through a process to do data conversion. And then the normal things that happened that report to the state happened. And we found ourselves creating problems for ourselves, both with our EDI partner and with the state. So your team helped us work through that. And now we don't run it through the system. We bring the data in, we migrate it, we test it, we validate it, we look to see what had been reported. We work with the states, we work with our EDI partner, and then when we're ready, then we send it. And that's been huge.
Huge.
Absolutely huge. And I give credit where credit is due to ReSource Pro is, we paid you to help us do that, and you've put it in place with all of the data conversions that you do for us, but you've also taken that to essentially what are your competitors who are also doing other data conversions for us, and you've shown them what they need to do to not create the same problems that we were all creating for ourselves.
So good corporate citizens.
Absolutely. I truly appreciate that level of partnership.
No, I mean, it's truly a partnership, So no, we understand that, but that's great. I mean, I know our team is not only helping out on conversions, but doing a lot of support work for you guys. Excellent. I mean, any other sort of challenges that you guys can think of that you're seeing, facing, can share?
So another data-related challenge that comes, we have to bring the data in, but we also have to bring all the attachments.
Oh, yes.
Thousands and millions of pages of attachments need to come in. And there's one TPA system that, for whatever reason, every single attachment is stored as a single page in a TIFF format. So when we bring that in, we know, because we're paying you to do it, we're going to have to. If it's a 200-page document with 200 individual files, we need to identify those 200 individual files. We need to recognize that they're in one document. We need to bring them into one document and convert them to PDF so we can make use of them in our system.
Yeah, no, and we worked through that the first time together, but now we've got something that we can leverage as an accelerator, right? Because that's I'll just call it a major TPA that will remain unnamed, but you guys have won a lot of business from them, which is a great thing.
It's good for us.
Voldemort.
Yeah.
Excellent. So why don't we move to the next question, guys? So, Bruce, I'm going to sort of start this one with you, or, we'll talk a little bit about Percipience. Like, as you look at, data in the insurance market, why don't you talk a little bit about why you feel that there's a need out there for a tool like Percipience?
Yeah, and we've been blessed to work with Jason on a migration here on a large California-based company, and so ReSource Pro is a great partner for us to work with. And the challenge is, we're, as we said kind of in the opening, insurers have lots of different sources that all have their own proprietary schemas. Pulling the data together so that you can establish a platform for analytics, as well as your operational and management reporting, your regulatory and compliance reporting, and deliver information to a variety of different business constituents in a form and context and in the timing in which they need to effectively continue to grow and support the business is a challenge. And so we're very reliant on the leverage that we get from partners like you, and we've been able to successfully integrate over 100 different systems in the 5 years that we've been implementing Data Magnifier. And just dealing with governance, a lot of times for some of our customers that don't have a single source of truth, right? You've got different users who are used to dealing with output from different systems, and net premium isn't always the same in every system, right? And claim amount, claim count. I wouldn't have thought until the client we're working with right now that claim count could be controversial, and yet I was wrong, because how they view it has been a heck of a lot more complicated than I would have imagined possible. But doing these little tweaks and configuring the system so that they see the business and can look at the business historically going forward and measure their progress in a way that is appropriate for their business view is a bit of a challenge, but it's part of the necessary work. And it's one of the few places where we really have to get quite a bit of business involvement and support. But that's usually a lot more challenging, frankly, than the technical aspects. We can pretty much do those with our eyes closed at this point. But
you've learned.
Yeah, it's
learned.
It's kind of, give me the few things I need, get out of my way, let me do your job for you.
I mean, I can just tell you, I remember 30 years ago, my first job at a carrier, personal lines, we were redoing our policy administration system. I'm working with all the data architects and the vendor, and we had a war room, like just all over the wall were just the data model, right? And I mean, here's a young guy coming out of college, and I'm like, so premium, one field? No, 35 million fields kind of thing. Yeah. So excellent. So Bruce, you talked about it a little bit in terms of resources, right? Yeah. So maybe you can start with sort of what are some of those time commitments, resources, things that I know you bring to the table, but you expect the carrier or the insurance organization to bring.
Yeah, I think we've been, one of the things that we've learned doing this for as long as we have is that, our clients' resources never really have the capacity they'd like to have to do these things. They've got to do these large transformation projects with marginal capacity in addition to their day jobs, which they're already largely over-occupied with. So we really focus on our resources are all 20, 30 plus year insurance type folks.
Sure.
We obla lines of business and can do things fairly well there. And so we really try to take most of the load because you can offload that and allow people to continue to do their day jobs and keep the business running. And so we really have gotten to the point where we can deal with just a handful, even on our tier 1 implementations. We can do full implementations of multiple systems with 5, 6, 7 part-time resources on the client side, a PM, a data architect, someone who understands the data models of the different data sources that we're dealing with, and then some business folks who can help validate the results, the reports, and the reconciliations on the back end when we're doing the conversions. And we try to do most of the heavy lifting because most of the time when we're being brought in, it's, I need this, and we're paying you to do the implementation because we need to be live in 10 weeks or
you have
6
the experience
months or that kind of thing, right? And so it makes sense to pay to do things that are one-time efforts, and then you learn to leverage and get the value out of it operationally. But we've been fortunate. We've actually had 2 of our clients license the product and implement it entirely themselves, right? And the only time we've spoken to them since 2 weeks of knowledge transfer was to ask them to take reference calls, which is kind of a nice position to be in. So I think it's important to have a system that's intuitive enough that it doesn't take a ton of training. If people understand insurance, they can look at the system and say, okay, well, I understand that, I can work my way around it. And so that's a big deal. It's the layout of the application has to make it easy. We focus really on simplifying, right? A lot of times when people are adding new applications to their portfolio, they're making their IT environment more complex. Our focus is really to simplify for the business users and the technical users by creating business flows that not only are cost effective to implement, but more cost effective to operate long term.
And we were talking about this a little bit during, as we were sort of preparing for this, sort of build versus buy, and what to do, especially in the data space. And I think you were giving some examples of, all the build solutions that are out there that, unfortunately didn't go the way that you wanted, or the carrier or the insurance organization wanted. But it sounds like you guys give a little bit of both. You've got a COTS-based product that you're able to use to accelerate the process, but then at the same time you're also handing over the keys to the castle.
Right. We deliver the full code and all the documentation so that some of our tier 1 and tier 2 customers, one of our best customers was 0 for 3 and spent.
That's a strikeout.
Spent enough money on those failed implementations to go through a couple CIOs in the process and came back to us and implemented the system and got it in. But they implemented it and they were able to extend it for what they needed and not really have to work with us too much. But we've got a number of customers that deal with it, and they really want a vendor who fully supports the implementation and the ongoing support. We have a SaaS offering, and so that flexibility is really key. Whatever organization we're working with, they may know what their needs are right now, but in the data space, the number of data sources, the tooling and analytics capabilities are going to continue to evolve. And so what your needs are 6 months from now may be very different. And so we try to make it so that you don't have to make a decision, am I going to do it myself? Am I going to do it with a vendor? Am I going to get some help? You could have ReSource Pro do it for you. We could do it. You can do it yourself. You can have a blend. We can do the knowledge transfer. But it's not only during the initial implementation, it's what do you do 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years, 15 years? People are spending tons of money on these investments in AI and advanced analytics, and trying to capture the shift, as Dan talked so eloquently about yesterday. And in really taking advantage of that, God knows where this is going to go, right? 7 years from now ago, nobody was talking about cloud in insurance. Who knows what the technology stack's going to look like 6 or 7 years from now, but because we can deploy on any platform, we're in production on Google, on AWS, on Azure, we know we'll be able to migrate it to that platform.
The data, the applications might change, the technologies might change, but you're still going to want the data.
That's right, and so you got to be able to preserve that investment, and that's really where you were kind of started the question in terms of, do I custom build or do I buy a vendor solution? With apologies to anybody who thinks differently, I don't think a lot of carriers, frankly, have the experience working with all of the different platforms to be able to create something that's going to survive those kind of transformations the way we've been able to do it.
That's fair. So Danny, I'm going to switch a similar question to you in terms of resources. Like as you sort of look at the projects that you have with data migration, what are the types of resources that you're leveraging internally and externally to get it done?
So, for us, it's getting the data in from the client. So we're leveraging our IT folks to get the data in, because that needs to be a repeatable process that is as short of a time period as it can be, because the way it works is we get it a couple of months early, we work on a conversion together, and then when we're ready to go live, they turn everything off on the 1st of July, and then we have to get the data out and go through it again. So there's a lot of effort and energy around optimizing that process. Then we have a claims ops team that focus on validating the conversion that our partners convert. Once we're comfortable with that, we then invite the examiners who are going to actually be working on the client into our QA system so that they can see the data and test the data and validate it themselves and be comfortable with it. And then when the day comes, we get it and we work through it. And that's actually another one of our challenges. Is if July 1st is the day, we are live July 1st doing all their new claims.
Okay.
But we don't have their data for their existing claims.
That's tough.
We're waiting for their TPA, who is not incented to get it to us in a hurry, to actually get us the data, right? And if they then put it on a hard drive with spinning platters and stick it in the mail, we've got to wait for it to come, and then it's a whole process.
I know we were joking around about it before, but in all seriousness, I've had people on my team hop in the car, drive somewhere, pick up a drive to bring it back so we can actually migrate the data.
Right.
So that is a real, a real challenge.
But one of the things we instituted when we started working with you is to do this whole conversion through the QA system. So we have a version of it that's maybe 6 weeks old by the time they're ready to go live. So if they do need to administer claims, but clearly they do, that are live, but we haven't received the data yet. And quite honestly, it can take somewhere in a 7 to 14-day time frame before we got it, converted it, and made it available to the examiners. They can at least go into the QA system and they can take a look at what's happened on the claim, what attachments are attached to the claim, what reserves were there, what payments were made, as of maybe 6 weeks ago, but it's better than nothing. Yeah.
Now, I think the other thing you mentioned is, sort of, bringing those examiners in, having them, sort of test some of that before it is in production. It's a key step in the process. But then another, nice thing about it is, as we build some of these repeatable playbooks, hopefully that is less and less time that they're away from their day job, right? I mean,
we try not to pull on their day job very much, and that's why we have a small ops team that are focused 100% on doing this.
So, sort of a related question in terms of these projects, right? I mean, in terms of how we implement these projects, right? Sort of, big bang, iterative, agile. I mean, there's tons of different methodologies out there. I mean, Danny, on your, account transitions, I think we've got a process in place where, we're working through those. We develop it, we test it out, we use that QA environment, and we move it into production. But Bruce, on some of these larger, implementations, I mean, recommendations to the group in terms of how to look at, overall, call it data implementation strategies.
Yeah, I think as one of our mutual favorite bosses, Bob LaRue, once said, if you've met one insurance company, you've met one insurance company, right? Everybody's a little bit different, and certainly a lot of things are common and consistent, but there are certainly some unique aspects to everyone, whether it's the way they look at their data or the type of business they focus on or what really differentiates their competitive advantage. And what we found is that the business drivers really have to dictate the technical implementation. And so we can't have the tail wagging the dog here, right? The system's got to be able to support the business need. And we've had clients say, like the one large client I referred to earlier where we did the 17 systems, they were under immense pressure because of a set of systems that they had to be off the systems by the end of the year. We started the project in January, and if they weren't off, it was going to cost them, someone's firstborn male child to continue. And so they were under quite a bit of pressure. So they were forced into kind of a big bang construct. In some others, we've got some where they're putting in a new policy admin system. And so getting the policy data in is under pressure, but they aren't as much under pressure on some other things. In one of the other tier ones we did, it was all about fines that they were getting for regulatory reporting problems. And they didn't really care about the money. The fines weren't that big. The problem was the states where they were getting fined were holding up rate increases because they were a little frustrated.
So it's the external, influencers. So the business, the states, the jurisdictions, compliance.
Why are you bringing in a new data solution, and what is the focus for migration? What are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to just establish a platform for analytics? That's great. Are you trying to have a place to put your historical data so that you don't have to migrate 30 years of data into your new policy system, and you can just put the in-force business there at renewal, those kind of things. And so we really don't, technically we've done it probably every way that you can slice and dice. So what are you trying to achieve? And we drive the the implementation that way.
Yeah, I think we look at it similar, Bruce. Or, I mean, depending on the project and what it is. I mean, my goal is to try to look for those wins, try to chunk it out, and work through it. But at some point, you do need to say, hey, look, we got to go live, right?
Right.
And there's that. But then, data is one of those things that it's constant care and feeding, right? The world changes around it. So if it's more dashboards, reports, analytics, that's always going to evolve. So there's an agile aspect to it as well.
Absolutely.
All right. So Danny, I'm going to go back to you on this next one here. So what would you sort of suggest as some strategies that everyone can use when they're approaching data conversion, right? So, and when I say strategies, ways that they can look at it where, we can save costs, right? Be fiscally responsible, but, still get the quality that we're looking for.
Well, we've chosen to do that by partnering with you, quite honestly, right? Because we want to have a repeatable process with a partner that we can trust. And the more that we do with you, the more accelerators that you're able to add, right? Because if we're bringing this customer in and they're with TPA X today, and we bring another customer in tomorrow and they're also using TPA X, then the data is coming from the same TPA system and it's going to come in the same format. And you've already converted it into our system once. So when you do it the second time, it's going to be that much easier. Right? So
that's true. I can't
having a repeatable process and building in accelerators is really the key for me.
Yeah, and I mean, just even so, as we even look at, larger, data migration projects, I mean, one of the things that I have my team put together is sort of that repeatable playbook, right? So, we can go through it, multiple times, do dry runs, make sure that we have it. Because, I mean, Danny, you were mentioning that, you'll get an earlier cut of the data, but, things do change, right? So you want to make sure that you can build that repeatable process.
Yep.
Bruce, how about yourself? I mean, sort of strategies around sort of keeping costs under control, but still achieving the outcome that the business is looking for?
I love what both you said about the repeatable process. We refer to that as our factory approach, right?
Okay.
So you carve it up in repeatable chunks that you can execute consistently with confidence. But I think one of the most overlooked challenges a lot of times is knowing what the end game looks like. How are you going to measure success? It's one of the first questions that we asked. And we talked a little bit about kind of the business driver and letting that kind of dictate the implementation strategy and approach. But what does success look like? At what point is it, I've got to match to the penny, month by month, by line of business, over the last 2 years, and then I have a tolerance of blah, or I need to be able to match claims or identify this level of fraud, or how are you going to measure success? Because that really can drive how you sequence things within the project, right? It may still take the same amount of time in total, but you may be able to do incremental deliveries to add more value to the business by understanding both what the business driver is and how they're going to measure success. The few projects we've had that have been a little bit more challenging are those where the definition of completion is a little less precise.
So what we've done in the past is, we've actually, probably, be purposeful about it, right? Have those conversations up front with the stakeholders, have them sort of define what success means, right? Call it a data strategy, call it a data plan, right? So as much as you put together, project plans and quality management plans, you can put together a data plan as well, right? So what are those, KPIs that, you're trying to measure and balance against? And let's make sure that we're building a plan against that.
Yeah, typically when we have those challenges, it's because the person who's doing the measuring changes during the project.
That sounds like change control.
Yeah, they don't always react well to those words, but yeah, I get it.
Excellent. Any other strategies that you guys had, or I mean, I know we talked about a bunch of things. I think we hit most of them, but
I think so.
Awesome. All right, so I mean, it wouldn't be a session without mentioning those two letters, that I think you already mentioned, Bruce. AI. Yeah. So, everyone's sort of talking about AI, everyone's doing AI. I call it the AI arms race. Like everyone, we've got different things going on, and some things are working and some things are not. So Bruce, I'll sort of talk to you first, or have you address this one first. But as you sort of take a look at AI strategies in insurance organizations, maybe you can just give some thoughts around data and data readiness as it sort of feeds into AI.
Yeah, it's still a garbage in, garbage out world, and so if the data that you're playing with and applying AI on top of isn't something you have confidence in, then that actually often is more damaging than not having any data at all, right? So establishing a solid foundation is paramount. Getting the data in a single source of truth that you have confidence in. One of the things I learned quite early in my career was that the most brilliantly architected data foundation doesn't mean squat if the users don't have confidence in the quality of the data that they're looking at. And so we've really built those kind of things into the foundation of our product, because otherwise it's not going to have the investment return that they want. But I think the other thing is you don't always know what needs you're going to have down the line.
That's true.
So I think the two other points that I'd make are, one, bring the data into your foundation at the lowest level of granularity that it's available from the data sources, so that you can, again, not only deal with today's requirements, but be prepared for whatever requirements are going to develop down the line. And then, I think beyond that, just understand that these things are going to evolve, and you're going to leverage AI in a lot of different ways. You can leverage it to continue to expand the product and your solution so that you can respond more quickly, but also so that your users get more comfortable and so that they can interact with the system. I know, some of the sessions earlier were talking about sentiment and whether people do what's easiest, right? And so you've got to make it easy to get the answers, otherwise they're going to try to find another way to do it, or they won't bother to go. So that's so key.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I'll just say I learned something, when we were doing that prep, and sort of, it makes logical sense, but I never really thought about explaining it to a customer that way of, really making sure that you're bringing things in at that lowest level, right? Right. So there's always going to be, decisions that are made, right? And, that balance of time and cost and quality, and sometimes bringing in aggregated data is it is easier. It is easier. It might meet today's needs, but does it meet tomorrow's needs, right? And again, especially with AI, getting to that next level of granular data, that's key.
It doesn't mean that you have to have all of your data in a pristine.
No, but the more you can.
But if your first pressures are claims fraud or identifying, you're being overwhelmed by the volume of applications, you want to be able to prioritize which apps to focus on for your underwriter, right? You can deal with segments and domains of data and get those foundations done and start to take advantage of AI capabilities there while you still establish the foundation in other areas. But if you don't take care to establish a single source of truth, and you don't take care to convince your business that the data is accurate and something that not only is accurate the day you go live, but will remain that way,
sure,
and that you have the guardrails in place, then you're going to be very disappointed and maybe looking for new work later on.
So Danny, I'll let you give some thoughts around Athens and what you guys are doing in the AI space and related to data.
So I had to make some notes because we've got so many initiatives going on. I don't want to miss any. But before that, I do want to challenge you, right? You were talking earlier about how you're using AI to map data.
Right.
And Dan was talking about how much and everything that ReSource Pro is doing on yesterday with AI, and how much money's been invested in AI with the agentic PM. So my challenge to you is, how are you going to use AI to map our data the next time we have a client that we want to bring in, so that we can do it quicker and cheaper?
Yeah, no, I mean, we're already starting to look at those tools. The cheaper, quicker, I get it. That's fair to ask, but yeah, no, I mean, I think that's
but fair.
We got to pay for the AI. But no, I mean, I think it's the same question we're getting all over the business, right? I mean, as we're, technology, services providers, we have to look at ways that we can, deliver those solutions quicker, more effectively, and then, hopefully pass some of those cost savings on to you, right? I mean, obviously we're still in business and we
Of
need to
course.
make a profit.
Of
But,
course.
as a partner, we're going to want to look at, ways to, pass some of those cost savings on to you.
Good. So yes, some of the ways we're using it today is we have an AI agent doing all of our claim intake by voice.
Okay.
We have an AI agent that will handle claimant questions, and if we can't answer it, then they'll transfer the person to the claimant or give them their email address or their phone number, to the examiner. We have an AI agent that handles service providers who want to know whether we've paid their bill or not, and where the check number was and when we sent it. We have a portal that we use with a partner of ours that does document analysis. So in the P&C world, we get a document that comes in, it's called a demand package, and it could be maybe between 500 and 1,000 pages.
Sure.
And before, we would have to pay an examiner to sit and read it and analyze it and pull out information and actions because of it. And that takes hours.
Sure.
And quite honestly, they're going to miss a lot of the things that are in there. We put this through the demand package documentation analysis system, and it summarizes it, and it makes it easy for the person to look at. It's been a huge boon, and we've been doing that with one of our partners that's in the room here today. So we're live with all of those, and then we've got some projects that we're working on. One of them is claim summarization. So it's to take that to the next degree. So not just one document, but every document, all the notepads, all the attachments, all of the payments, all of the reserves, everything related to the claim. Like we tested one recently with one of our partners, and it had 12,000 pages on this one claim.
Wow.
And we bring that in, it does a claim summarization. It gives you, through their portal, it gives you the ability to look at the citations, to go exactly to the PDF page or the section on the PDF page that highlights what it is they're telling you in the claim summary. So that's huge, and then we bring that and we ingest that and we bring that into our claim notes for the examiners.
With that many pages, is like it feels like an A.
Right. We're doing something similar with plan of action. So once we've summarized the claim, the system knows everything about the claim. We can then work on filling out our plan of action templates. We're trialing with a file and serve. So when we have to serve to attorneys, package everything up there, and we're doing examiners, when examiners make calls and they need some help. I know one of the ladies was talking earlier this morning about translation and transcription, with that ability where we can make that call with one of our partners using AI, and it will translate the call real time. And it will then transcribe the call, and we put the notes in.
Same partner that's in the room?
Same partner that's in the room. We'll put the notes into our claim system, but we'll also put the recording voice into the claim system. So we've got it in the original language as well, if we need it.
And just for clarity, that partner was on stage earlier with Crossties. Our team works very closely with them. I know, Beth Long and Alex Perry from my team are on, and, Athens is another Crossties customer. But it's excellent.
We're doing outbound medical status calls. So we have an AI agent that will call to find out if Mary Jane went to the doctors this morning and whether she had any restrictions.
Do without your notes.
Sorry. Whether she had any restrictions on her, and if the person doesn't answer, the AI agent doesn't get upset. Right? They just call back. And they get frustrated like our people do. And bizarrely, we've got one. You wouldn't think about this, but we've been able to use the AI agent to make outbound calls to verify the W-9s for all these providers that we're paying. Before we write them a check, if you're a new chiropractor, before we write you a check, we need to verify the W-9.
Yeah.
So now we're using AI agents to make those outbound calls and do that, and we just need the accounting team to do the ones that are, suspect.
Correct, but it minimizes what.
Absolutely minimizes.
So you're obviously leveraging a lot in the AI space. It's in production. You're using it. You're seeing the value. And if it wasn't for the accurate data, that'd be a tougher job.
That would be a much harder job.
All right, guys. I think we're out of time. I really appreciate everyone attending. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.